The mission of the YWCA has been a part of my life for many, many years. As a girl in Houston, I was a member, and it actually helped shame and frape a lot of the volunteer work that I do today. And that was so well aligned with my community service. As a girl, it included things like making sure that we were feeding the homeless, even though we were impoverished, always making sure that others had. So my mother was a huge proponent of giving back to the community. So when I think about the YWCA, I'm focused on empowering women as my mother empowered me. I'm focused on eliminating racism. Growing up in racist society, it's important. A lot of the times we think about ourselves and we're not focused on others, but I think in this time of racial unrest, the YWCA has done a great job in making sure that people understand the need to stand up and stand against racism and fight systemic racism. Those are things that have always been with me. And in terms of ongoing volunteerism, even being at the food bank as a staff member, being the director there, also giving back to the community, remembering those things that my mother instilled in me meant so much. And I'm able to now do that with my family, extended family, and the members of my New Jersey community. One thing that I want to add about that is that it is so important to include our young girls in the work that we do when it comes to empowering women. Even though they're girls, they will become women, strong women, and I want them to be bold leaders. When I think of the YWCA, bold leadership is that. I often think about my mother. She passed away when she was 50. She had triple negative breast cancer, and it advanced to stage 4 within a month. My mother had such a strong background, and she was such a powerful woman. I remember going door to door with her. She sold Avon, and we would walk amongst the hot Houston streets, and that's how I got my work ethic, always being prepared, always being ready. She told me about making sure you have multiple streams of income, even though we didn't know what that meant when I was young, but now it's important to me. And so what I decided to do a couple of years ago to actually honor my mother was to start selling Avon again, because it's something that she did. And now I donate that money to organizations that have a focus on breast cancer awareness. And that's just another thing that I love about the YWCA, having those resources that are available for women like my mom, women like my sister, who is now also stage 4, triple negative. She's in her 30s. And so being able to make sure that women understand that there is hope, that's something that I'm just so super proud to be a part of. And so I stand on the shoulders of so many women, not just my family members, but I also think about Barbara Jordan. I grew up in Houston, and Barbara Jordan went to the same church that I did when I was a little girl. And so just thinking about the legacy that she made such a big difference for me. And it was one of the reasons I wanted to focus on political science, which is also a part of empowering women, giving women a voice, not only around voting, but making sure that women understand what their rights are, reproductive rights, all of those things. Standing on the shoulders of women like Anita Hill, who's one of my sorority members. Sora Anita Hill, she spoke her truth. That is so key to me, for women to be able to stand up and speak their truth. And even on a personal note, I'm a victim of sexual assault, and I strike that. I'm not a victim, I'm a survivor of sexual assault. And knowing that Anita Hill is a part of the Me Too movement, it encourages me to also say Me Too. And so even thinking outside of the women that are public figures, all of the women throughout the state of New Jersey that are fighting this good fight against systemic racism, poverty issues, and so forth, those are women empowering other women. So I stand on all of their shoulders, and it just fills my heart with pride to know that I'm not alone in this, and that I can reach back and help those young girls, even the girls in the Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated Youth Auxiliary that we're talking to about teaching a girl to lead. That leadership development is so key and instrumental on all levels, not in terms of just workforce development, but citizenship and being a person of dignity and respect So the why helps me stand on all of those shoulders, and hopefully some of those young girls that I mentor can stand on mine, and we can all be a part of that legacy of the YWCA. In terms of someone following my footsteps, I wanted to laugh at first, because the first thing I thought, have fun. Life is short. Laugh it up, dance, be excited about the world. With the pandemic, many people are afraid to go out. We don't have the opportunity to hug and embrace and socialize as we used to, but there are other ways that we can do that. And I just think that laughter just brings them out, this community that a lot of people are missing right now. And so, of course, I want to encourage people, even thinking back to my younger self, have fun. Save your money, I talked about those multiple revenue streams. Always be prepared, be an independent woman. Also thinking about, what does your legacy look like? What is that legacy that you want to leave behind? Always have a plan B and a plan C and a plan D. All the way, I guess, to plan W, because you never know what's going to happen. And so I just think preparation is key. If you are always ready, you never have to get ready. The last thing that stands out to me about thinking back to when I was younger, or a legacy that I want to leave for other women and young girls, reminds me of Shirley Chisholm. She said, when you're invited or not invited, bring your own chair. And so literally, in my car, there's a folding chair, and sometimes I've had to pull it out and create my own space, because sometimes as a Black woman, as a woman in general, there's not always a seat at the table for me. And so I would always say to young girls, never let anyone tell you no and that you don't belong and that you can't have a seat at that table, even though now they're virtual seats. You pull up to that Zoom table and make sure that your voice is heard. COVID-19 has impacted my life in so many different ways. There's been loss in terms of family members. There's been the personal impact on me. About, I want to say the beginning of 2020, so literally a year ago, I was dealing with COVID symptoms and I didn't know what it was. And there came a point where I thought I was going to die. I was in the emergency room. No one knew what was going on. I couldn't be tested because that wasn't really happening back then. I was sent to 3 or 4 different emergency rooms, and it came to a point where my wife and I sat down and we said, we need to draft our wills. I couldn't breathe, and I thought that that was literally the end. I'm glad to be here now, and I'm just so thankful that we have women like now Vice President Kamala Harris, who's also a graduate of Howard University, like I am, that is advocating for Black women, for women of color, to be able to understand the vaccine, because there's a lot of fear in the Black community. And I'm so proud of her and the legacy that she's leaving, and knowing that with COVID-19, we will see a shift. We will see things changing. When I think about COVID specifically in New Jersey and the amount of lives we've lost, over 3,000 of them as of last week were Black people. And those numbers are disproportionate. I want to see change around that. I want people to understand that racism is actually a public health crisis, and that is real. There are disproportionate numbers, of course, but even thinking about things like the level of pain that people are under, and when they are turned away for treatment or denied medications, when they go for COVID tests and they were turned down, all of those things are interrelated. In terms of my work with COVID and making sure that people's civil liberties are heard, I do that through the Division on Civil Rights. In New Jersey, DCR is the lead agency that's responsible for making sure that there is enforcement of the law against discrimination. The LAD is celebrating our 75th anniversary, And because of that, we're able to make sure that the community is aware that their rights are protected. These are civil liberties that are related to COVID-19, places of accommodation, workplaces, schools, all of these places that people think that, hey, no one's gonna listen, I don't have a voice. DCR is there to provide that voice and make sure that we're focused on anything related to bias, harassment, intolerance, discrimination. And I'm just so proud to be able to partner with the community and the hundreds of stakeholders that we work with in terms of other nonprofits, as well as the YWCA, so that people understand that through COVID, we will see it through to the other side. It had me reflect on my sorority, thinking about being a Zeta. We were founded 100 years ago. This is our centennial year. And to think back and see, we did that during a pandemic. And now we have hundreds of chapters, across the globe, and we're thriving. And so that again lets me know that we will make it past COVID. And it's my personal mission to ensure that, again, people have a voice, but it also inspired me to go back to school. That's not something that I have to do. I have a doctorate in human services and nonprofit management, but I wanted to focus on public health. So now I'm a graduate student at TCNJ, and that's purposeful. It's local. It means a lot to me because I want to ensure that when we talk about social determinants of health and health disparities, again, that women of color, BIPOC communities, that all of us have a voice, and so that we can fight COVID-19 together. The mission of YWCA doesn't need Denalerie to advance it. It doesn't need you to advance it. It doesn't need Tay to advance it. It needs the world to advance, because we can't do this alone. But I know that every small effort helps. I think that community awareness is a huge part of advancing this effort around empowering women and sharing voices, sharing in community, even throughout a pandemic and social distancing. We don't have to be socially distant. We can just be comfortable and spacious. There's so many different ways that we can do it. And I think what I really want to focus around is that outreach effort when it comes to advancing the mission of the YWCA. I want people to feel included, that they're a part of it. I want all women, all girls to know that they have a home at the Y. I also think it's important when we think about people like Zora Neale Hurston, who spoke about, if you're silent about your pain, they'll kill you and say you enjoyed it. And that's the thing that gets me. I really want to ensure that women understand how to advocate for themselves, how to reach out to their local politicians, how to reach out to organizations like the New Jersey Division on Civil Rights and say, I need help. But it also needs to factor in inclusion. Not everyone has access to high-speed internet. Not everyone has access to reading fact sheets that are posted online. So we have to be creative in terms of how we connect with people, especially during the time of the pandemic. That's why I really appreciate the Y, because you've now turned your breast cancer resources into resources that can meet multiple people where they are, and that's valuable. I mentioned my sister being stage 4. She has access to the Y's resources and has utilized them, and honestly, those could be a part of her life-saving effort. So if the Trenton area, Princeton area, Mercer County area, YWCA is able to reach her all the way in Houston, Texas, just imagine what the YWCA could do on this national level. But specifically here in the Mercer County area, I want to make sure that people's voices are heard when it comes to systemic racism. And I can't say it enough. I'm tired of the George Floyds. I'm tired of the Breonna Taylors. I'm tired of people not listening. I'm tired of the abuse, the complicity, and the violence. It's really time for all of us to unite and have these courageous conversations, these community dialogues. And it's not about finger pointing, it's not about right or wrong, it's about being a bold leader. It's about saying, I own that. I have my own implicit biases, but once we start having those conversations around it and sort of lowering this veil and getting rid of that elephant in the room, so many people's lives could be changed right here in our own backyard. So community partnerships are so important. When I think about DCR and the work that we're doing on the ground, I want it to be boots on the ground, not people behind a screen. I want us out in the community, meeting people where they are and talking about faith-based interactions, talking about our Orthodox community and racial justice issues that concern us here in New Jersey. We don't have those conversations often enough. We also need to think about our youth and that intergenerational work. Whatever happened to the mentoring that we used to do years ago? It still exists, but now with the pandemic, even that has fallen off in a sense, and people are less connected. So I do see the YWCA as being an instrumental part of community building, and not only building communities local, but broad span as well, and pulling people in, meeting people where they are, and saying to them, you matter. You are a part of us empowering women. You are a part of fighting racism. And once we do that, and once we start to do it well, I think that we will have come a long way. We have a long way to go, but I think together we will indeed make an impact. I'm all about freedom and liberation, and I think that the YWCA has helped me get there.